So,
Mhm.
welcome to the Disenfranchised, Fiona Boswell. How are you doing today?
Hi. I'm good, thank you, Ed. How are you?
Yeah, I'm well, very thank you very much, and surviving all the winds and bad weather we've been having lately,
Yeah.
as we were saying just a moment ago, and yeah, hoping it will stop it very soon. How is it where you are?
It is very windy, quite blowy, quite, it's not cold, it's just very, very blowy at the moment. And it's not raining, thankfully, because when that comes, it all happens as well.
Yeah, it makes it a lot worse, doesn't it? Anyway, let's start with the interview then, and I'd like to start where I always start, and that's to understand what was your first job.
My first job many, many years ago was working in a shoe shop called Freeman Hardy Willis. I was a Saturday girl at that time. You could work no more than about 4 hours, I think, on a Saturday. So I started life in the children's department of Freeman Hardy Willis, um, changing shoes for smelly kids' shoes, smelly kids' feet on
Smelly
a
kid
Saturday
shoes.
for my pocket money. And actually, I used it quite well. It helped to fund my post GCSE travel, and yeah, I enjoyed my independence.
Oh, excellent. You went travelling then after GCSEs?
Yes, we went. I went abroad for 6 weeks with a friend of mine. We went to relatives, but we had to pay our own way for our flights, so that helped fund the flights for those.
Wow, that's pretty cool though. I don't think many people sort of take the opportunity after GCSEs. It's normally,
Yeah.
university or something like this, a break in
Mhm.
between. But that's cool. Where did you go?
I went to Jamaica in America,
Oh, very
which is
nice.
where my family are from, with my best friend. We went together. It was our little reward for having done the upper maths paper and endured the extra stress of revising for that.
Yeah, yeah. Wow, very jealous. Sounds good. So after you returned, then what was the plan for you?
For me, when I returned, I was kind of hell bent on doing what was necessary to become a lawyer from quite a young age. So that was very much the plan. Back to GCSEs, on to uni, full gravy train right the way through.
Fantastic. And at that point, did you know what sort of law you wanted to get into?
Oh no! Well, I thought I knew. I thought I wanted to save the world and become a civil liberties lawyer, and that was what I thought I would do at that time. And I did various caseworker roles in volunteer centres and things like that. And so it wasn't until I actually went to university and then got some work experience that I kind of honed it down a little bit more to a specific practice area that I thought would interest me. And once I'd done my training as a training contract as well.
Fantastic. So how long were you studying for then?
It's 6 years in total. That was undergraduate, and I did a part of a master's as my postgraduate as well, but that was whilst working.
Wow, sounds like a lot of work, and you must have been really determined at that point to achieve that goal. To go through that education system. So
Absolutely, yes.
what was driving you? Was it to save the world, or was it influence from family, or yeah, what was making you want to go into that world as a career?
I had an interest in practicing the law from quite a young age. I was the first in my wider family to go to university. My parents are I'm a second gen immigrant, and so I was the kind of first one to go to a university here. And I knew I wanted to do the law because I loved words, I loved language, and my mother had spent an awful lot of time watching law programs on the telly, and I would watch alongside with her. And I thought that was what the law was all about. Actually coming into it and then practicing law as well, I found that there was a lot more to being a lawyer than what was shown on telly. And there were many, many different areas that you could practice in, and some went to court and some didn't, and some did contract work. And it was very, very diverse. And that itself I also found quite attractive, because there were so many different options once you started to practice of what you could actually qualify into doing.
Yeah, it's interesting. I guess you do kind of get influenced by telly in a way, don't you? Think it's all criminal law and
You
and
think
sorting
everybody's
out
a
wills.
barrister?
Sorry.
You think everyone's a barrister?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And I have to be very honest and say I mean, I'm still discovering areas of law that I've never heard of before, and I'm not looking for them particularly. I'm just hearing that, you know, these are important elements in business and day-to-day life. And yeah, it must have been pretty fascinating. So where did your career sort of start to take you then? Which direction did you start to go in?
Well, I did a mini pupillage at Tewkes Court Chambers. I was lucky enough through my mum and her wonderful way of networking with people to have the opportunity to do a mini pupillage there with Leon Daniels, and that was a great experience. So whilst I loved it, I knew, having done that, that I didn't want to be a barrister. And then I applied for a vacation placement at a small firm called Davenport Lyons in London, which was a media law firm then. And I did a placement with them for a couple of weeks to see if I liked the commercial side. I spent 2 weeks mainly stuck in a room reading files. I went to court about once, and that actually put me off doing anything to do with commercial law, which is what I've ended up doing, because I thought it was really boring and not much happened. So when I actually started my training contract, I thought I was going to be a litigator. I qualified into corporate law, and I loved the transactional side of things, and that's what I went into first off. I loved working with businesses. I loved advising businesses and helping them grow by sale or acquisition, and that was the area that I went into at an early stage.
Right, excellent. So what sort of businesses were you working with at this point in time?
Small to medium-sized businesses, local businesses that were growing. I was at a practice in Nottingham, which was then a regional firm, and we worked with many of the local businesses to help them, you know, with whatever they needed from a commercial or corporate side. And so that was principally it. I developed a practice that became, was principally mainly retail.
Okay.
And that's where franchising came into everything.
Right. Okay. So yeah, explain that through then, because obviously you're in the franchise industry now, and yeah, very well known within the industry. So yeah, how did that kind of journey start for you within retail?
I mean, I think it seems to be a little known thing that many retailers actually franchise, either in this country or outside of this country, and that principally seems to be a model that is widely used across the retail sector as a way of growth of the business. And it was through working with retail clients that I discovered how prolific franchising is as a concept, and that it wasn't just restricted to big brands and the sort of known high street operators that are in the food sector. So to me, it was just another one of the ways in which a business can look to grow. And it seems to be a very successful way of doing so for my clients.
Yeah. Why do you think it's not so much in the public eye then? Because it is everywhere in retail, isn't it? The franchise model. So yeah, why is it not so well known, do you think?
I don't think people learn about it. I don't think it's not something, you don't see programs about it necessarily. I mean, you do now, every now and again, but you don't see it as a concept anywhere. You don't study it. If you study business, there's many, you know, business degrees that many years ago did not cover franchising at all. If you did a law and business or even just a straight business model, it wasn't really covered as a way that a business could grow as a known thing, which is really surprising considering some of the bigger players in franchising and how widely used across the world it is as a method of growth for any business structure. So it just seems to be a bit hidden under the radar, I'd call it.
Yeah, it's strange, isn't it? So why do you think it is a successful route for a retail business in particular to grow?
For retail, it's a business format that they have. So if they have a proven and successful business format and brand and model, it enables them to achieve quite wide growth by working, you know, alongside others to get their brand and knowledge out there. It's particularly useful if you're looking to grow internationally because it allows you to use local operators. and essentially have those local operators who might be better versed with specific nuances of that particular locality and of that particular type of customer, but still be able to achieve the reach of growth within a particular country outside of the UK as well. And I just think it allows you to maintain that brand control and reputation through the documentation that you put in place, but whilst also achieving the levels of growth that you want without necessarily having to open up all your own stores everywhere.
Is there less risk then to the original brand owner in going down that franchising route?
There is more control achieved by the documentation that you put in place. I mean, with any business structure, there is an element of risk, but for a business looking to take a franchise concept, there's definitely less risk in taking on a franchise concept than in necessarily starting up your own business, because you are at least have the comfort of working with a proven and successful business model, which you are then following that system of and are pretty much ensured success as long as you do follow that system.
Okay, cool. So going back to your career then, so did you stay within retail throughout, or have you gone into other sectors, and how did your career progress?
Once I discovered I had a penchant for franchising, I focused on the sector as my main niche, and through doing so the whole wide gamut of what is franchising opens up, and we now work with anything from domiciliary care right the way through to hospitality, universities, kids clubs, dog walkers, you name it. Franchising is in nigh on every form of feasible business sector that you could think of presently. It never used to be necessarily. That used to be, I would say, historically quite restricted to retail and hospitality as being sort of the main fields within which franchising was a chosen growth structure. But now it's really expanded, huge in the leisure side as well, as just another way for businesses to successfully grow the way that they operate in a country, in a territory, in a region, whatever it is they want to achieve.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. But it's quite interesting what you said there about universities. I didn't realise there were universities that are franchised as well.
Yes, there are. Well, there are. If you take into account independent schools, there's an interest certainly in heritage education, English education abroad, expatriate countries and such like. So there's always the opportunities to expand your educational offering, as well as anything else. And universities likewise would always be looking to attract overseas students and such like. If they can set up satellite offerings in particular countries, that's also an opportunity for them as well.
Yeah, sure. I've realised that I've probably come across a few of them in the past, and in places like the Middle East, there's like the London Business School or something like this, isn't there, that are over there? So yeah, it makes sense. Like it's every day to me that there's a new sector, a new area that I realise is franchise, and it's fascinating, isn't it? Because yeah, my initial impression was, I guess, like you said, really, like it used to be, was mainly food and beverage outlets or that sort of thing was my kind of thought process, like a McDonald's, of course. You know, I think that's where most people's minds go to when they hear the word franchise. So for you now, then, what's your kind of day-to-day tasks? What's your role in franchising today?
Well, I'm a specialist franchise partner with Knights. So my day-to-day is advising franchise businesses principally. So we have a large team at the practice of which I form one part. My principal area is on the contractual side, so I can be drafting contracts for businesses looking to start franchising or grow by franchising, whether that's in this in this country or otherwise. We also act for major operators in the franchise sector who have multiple franchise units or operate multiple franchise brands. So we could be advising them on whatever they require, from development agreements, such like. We deal also with the property side of franchising, so anything to do with the taking of premises, agreements for leases, all of that sort of thing as well. Sales and acquisitions of franchises. We've got a lot of that going at the moment. It's always a very buoyant sector in that particular field. Those looking to grow, those looking to exit, those looking to invest in franchising as well.
Yeah, wow, it covers the whole life cycle then, pretty much. So in your time then, what's been the most surprising business or sector that has franchised for you? What surprised you the most?
That's interesting. I think it's the feet. It's the feet.
Feet.
The fish fish
Oh.
spa franchises. So franchising attracts fads. So it's and it is interesting to me that they ever get franchising. Although I think one of the most unusual things I've seen actually franchised was a level of a game.
A level of a game? You mean a
level
computer
of a game? A computer game, yes. Level of a computer game being franchised. So that has to actually be the most unusual concept I've seen franchising. Levels of a computer game.
Yeah, how does that work? I mean, I can understand a game maybe, but a level of a game, and I'm taking this is pretty recent, right?
Yeah, well, yes, it's within the last 5 years, yes. Yes, so that had to be the most unusual, the most unusual thing I've ever seen franchised. Different levels of a game.
Yeah, I'm thinking it's like a World of Warcraft. It's some sort of online game, and somebody's created this game, and then I'm not sure how I'm not sure I understand how that gets franchised.
It took me a while to get my head around it as well. But yes, that's definitely that, and the feet-eating fish were definitely the most strange things I've ever seen franchised.
Yeah, it seems to have died down, that one now, hasn't it?
Yeah.
Though not so many people,
Thankfully.
sticking their feet in water with fish jumping away at them. Yeah, I never tried it. I never fancied that one. It just seemed a bit too weird to me. But yeah, cool. So, in your experience, then, do you think there are sectors that are better suited to the franchising model than others? And are there any that you think just really shouldn't look at it as a model?
I don't think I could say that from a sector perspective. I think it's more about the business, what stage of growth it's at, how stable the business is, how profitable the business is, how robust its systems are, whether it has in place the right operational team to help it grow, whether it's protected its assets and intellectual property adequately, rather than it being that a sector as a whole might not necessarily be suited to franchising. I would say franchising is extremely diverse, and there are all sorts of different ways in which it has helped different business structures to grow. If you take the kids club sector, for instance, where it's not a premises-based offering, whereas traditionally, franchising was always something linked to something being premises-based, but actually it's had a huge impact in that sector and enabled a massive amount of growth for businesses, because it's a model that has aligned itself nicely with the way that people want to lead their lives as well. Not just a way of achieving business growth, but actually meeting the needs of individuals who are looking to do something more than just work for somebody else. So I feel that it's been quite an innovative business structure. And enabled businesses to work in a way that aligns itself with people's needs and desires, particularly in the modern world we have now of hybrid working and such like. So it's a smart business structure. I don't think it's not suited to anything, but I do think you have to have those core building blocks before you consider franchising whatever sector you are in, of making sure that you've got that proven and successful model, those systems, that operational team, etc., in place, and particularly protected your IP and got all that in place first.
Yeah, sure. So what's the the biggest challenge for a business that's wanting to franchise?
Biggest challenge, probably having the right operational team in place, because a successful business is often successful because those running it and operating it have worked really hard to make it work.
Yeah.
And when you franchise a business, it's another business. So that operator who's made that work, that entrepreneur that's put all their time and energy into making the concept work, then it needs to either step aside and focus on franchising it and make sure they've got the right succession planning in place to make sure that their business continues to operate successfully, or he needs to bring somebody in to help franchise the concept for them. But either way, the operational team that that business has needs to change. And I think that hurdle is one that is tricky, but really important to navigate well to make franchising work for you as a business.
Yeah, definitely. So, is that something that you think is easy for a potential franchisee? So somebody looking to maybe buy a franchise license, is that easy for somebody to spot? What things do you think they could look out for in a franchisor that is a sign that this is a well-run operation?
Well, I think for franchisees, you're buying a brand. You're buying a brand, you're buying a system, and you're buying an operation, a model that you can follow. So it's really making sure you have thoroughly investigated the concept that you want to invest in. Has it been running for a while? Has it had time to establish a well-run system as part of what it is doing? Has it protected all of the brands which it operates under that you are investing in and that you will also be operating in? Do you know who runs it? Who's the owners? Who is involved in that business? How involved are they in the business? How central to the business are they? That sort of thing. And how many operating stores do they have? Or operations have they run? How long have they been running? Have they tested and proven the model? So those are the sort of questions that I would want to know, because I'm investing in a concept that should be proven and successful, and I need to know that it is.
Yeah, it's interesting though, isn't it? Because there's obviously, like you said, fads or new trends that are coming into play, and so a business that's just franchised might actually be quite an exciting one to get on board with, because the potential for growth and to tap into a growing trend. But if they haven't been going for 5 or 10 years, that becomes a little bit of a challenge, I'd imagine, for people to say, I can't see that it's really proven time and time again. So
Yes.
yeah, I could see that being a real challenge. Do you think that people should still be sort of cautious or wary, or is there other investigation they should do with a relatively new franchise brand?
Yeah, I mean, I think there is an element of caution with relatively new concepts always, that there's risk in all business.
Yeah.
And often, just because a concept is new doesn't necessarily mean that it won't work. It may just be that it's new to the UK, and it's a concept
Yeah.
that's very well established around the world or in other countries. So that track record of, where and how does a brand work should, you need to look beyond just whether it's in this country, but perhaps it's track record elsewhere as well. But where with newer concept, there is more risk, but there can also potentially, as you highlighted, be more reward for those taking them, because they can be the first to bring a concept to market. So you've got to kind of weigh one thing against the other. But either way, franchising is different to starting up a new business. There should be some element of proven success somewhere for you to invest in a franchise concept, because you need to know that that model's been tested before you start running it, as opposed to you just starting up and doing something straight away. So wherever it is, if it's new to here, there may be greater risk, but there also may be greater reward.
Yeah. Do you think there's less risk the longer a brand has been operating for as a franchise? I'm just wondering if that's something that
It's interesting.
correlates, or if that's something that is yeah, it depends on a case by case basis.
Yes, I mean, I think, more established operators have made their mistakes already. They've ironed out the system. They have well-run franchises, and there'll also be many other franchisees within that network that you can talk to about what it's like to be a franchisee with that network. And they're all publicly available. You can find them, you can have those conversations, and you can get that comfort. Newer concepts, you don't have that extra sort of resource to actually ask questions of, but you can still do your due diligence. You can find out a fair bit of information from research that you can do on the internet and into their businesses in other countries. You can make contacts through LinkedIn with other operators if they don't have a presence in the UK, and you can also just explore the journey of that concept. If you look at the US is at least 10 years ahead of the UK in franchising. And we have seen a similar trajectory of growth in franchising here, but we're 10 years behind. So you can get some idea of what might be coming
Yeah.
as the next thing. I mean, domiciliary care wasn't something that existed here. It came from there. And it's come across, and we've embraced it and pushed it on as a brand. And now we have many operators in that area in the UK. And at one stage it was new.
Yeah.
Various leisure concepts weren't over here, but it's staying live to trends, interests, that sort of thing, as you would with any business venture, and then perhaps seeing the opportunities that are available to you.
Yeah, it's interesting because I've spoken to a couple of brands fairly recently. One within therapies, actually both within therapies, I guess, in a private kind of practice, as opposed to going to the NHS for these therapies. And
Yeah.
I was looking at them like, wow, yeah, what a great idea. But you're right, they're both in the US, and both doing really well, proven concepts that now it's coming to the UK and seems to be taken off really well, very popular with the general public. So yeah, that's really interesting. I hadn't thought of that before, and I might start going to look at some American brands and see
See what's out there.
what's out there. Exactly. Yeah, fantastic. So I want to kind of go back to kind of what you're doing today a little bit more then. So you're the regional chair for the Midlands for EWIF. So I wondered what kind of activities are you doing? And that's encouraging women in franchising, by the way. And that's for the audience. But what activities are you doing, and how is it helping to encourage women to get into franchising?
Well, we create a space where female business owners and those who are in the industry that are looking for more female franchises within their networks can come together and really share best practice. So there are many business owners out there who may be at the early stage of their franchising journey, and I think it's really useful for them to be able to get into a room with others and with suppliers and with others like them, and just talk about what issues they may be having with their business growth, that sort of thing. So we have regular meetings, which are in one of three places presently in the Midlands, which is either Nottingham or in Birmingham principally. And at those meetings, we will have a hot topic, which we discussed the last session. We spoke about worker rights issues and things impacting kids sector franchises. And it will be sort of hot topics that are often chosen by the members at those meetings. And we'll also always have a session where we allow people to put forward things that they might be having a particular issue with, whether it's recruitment or something like that. And we can have that area also covered and discussed amongst those who are present at the meeting. And it's a really open environment. We have franchisors at different levels of their journey, some who may have just started, some who have been operating for years, and we can all sort of learn from each other about ways to support those in the industry. So that's the kind of things that we do at the Midlands meetings.
Yeah, it's really cool. So, um, I know a lot of people's opinion of the franchising industry. And I only know this just from speaking to people more recently. Is that it's a place that was traditionally dominated by grey-haired white men, to put it bluntly. So, how long have you been in franchising for now yourself?
20 plus years, yes.
20 plus years. So, have you seen the balance kind of shift over that period of time?
Absolutely, yes. I would concur with your initial impression of franchising. It certainly was when I started advising in the industry, very much so. A little bit of a closed shop, very male, definitely very white, definitely very above a certain age bracket. But I would say that the franchise world of today is far more diverse than it was. The representation at a high level at the British Franchise Association has quite changed considerably. The fact that the organisation now takes into account franchisees within that organisation is fantastic, because there are generations of operating franchises, and we are all part of the industry, franchisees and franchisors. And actually, as a sector, it is genuinely incredibly diverse, but it really wasn't reflected in
Yeah.
those who were essentially leading the industry at that time when I entered into it.
Yeah, it's interesting because I've only really been in the sector for 3 years,
Yeah.
and doing this podcast, I've been speaking to whoever wants to have a chat with me, really, and open to it. And I think I had a little count up to see how many were female against male, and I
Mm.
think I have more female business owners that are speaking to me than male. And I don't know if that's because of personalities or what, but to me it seems quite balanced. I've come into it and it feels quite quite balanced. And actually, people that are listening to this podcast, there's probably more females that listen than the males. So, yeah, from my perspective, it feels quite balanced. But I know there's that history there that it wasn't like that at all. So something's definitely changed, and I think, well, I hope that more people could see that there's this diversity and balance in the industry, and it shouldn't be something. This shouldn't be put off for any reason along those lines, really. So, I think it's great that the stuff that you guys are doing at EWIF, and yeah, maybe one day I can help and support in some way.
That's good.
But uh, I also know you've been a judge for Elite Franchise as well, with their top 100 brands. So how has that been for you? Has that been interesting? And yeah, what sort of things are you looking for when you're judging these awards?
I am always amazed by the entries to the awards, the level of care and input that goes into them, and the amount that those in the industry are doing with the businesses, with communities, and the difference that they are making is just huge. And I've had the honour of being part of the awards for a number of years, and throughout the pandemic years that we are still just coming out of. So I've really seen some stories of how brands have survived and thrived during that time, and measures and steps, and the flexibility and adaptability and resilience of the industry
Yeah,
during that time, more than anything else. So it's been a pleasure to see how the industry has come together and supported each other during that time, and the amazing input that many of those in the franchisee have made to communities as a whole. As well, in the measures and steps that they have taken. I would say, when you're making entries, don't be afraid to shout about what you've done, document it, and take the time to do them properly, and fill them in completely. It's a good way to actually reflect on what you've done as a business. And I know that many of these business owners, they have been absolutely beyond busy over this period, managing their businesses, managing their franchise networks, etc., and having to deal with that. So, entry awards might not be front of mind, but I do think it's a great mirror for brands to have, to realize what they are doing, what great things they are doing. That should be recognized.
Yeah, I've written a few myself, so you've probably read some some of the stuff that I've written for expense reduction analysts, and I know going through and trying to understand every element of the business. So I mean, for expense reduction analysts, there was it's about 750 franchisees around the world and about 60 to 70 staff. So trying to understand every single story in that network and trying to put words to that in an impactful way is it's really difficult. It's just, there is not much time to do it, it feels, but it's a worthwhile exercise. I think from my part. So I was a franchise recruitment manager, and it helped to give me stories that I could then use. So for any franchisors that might be listening, definitely I think it's worth doing, because it helps to build out your knowledge of everything that's going on, and like you say, reflect on the year that's gone by, and remember that you're doing some good in the world, I think, as well, is important, isn't it? So it's cool. Excellent. So it sounds like you enjoy doing those awards then. So what do you like most about the franchising industry? What's your favorite thing about working within this environment?
I think the franchising industry is, we're a very close, fun bunch. And I think what's lovely about it is how the industry comes together more than anything else. It's quite a social industry. We like to gather and network and talk to each other in amongst it, share best practice. There's a lot of sharing. There's a lot of helping other brands, within a network, where we like our forums. We like to be able to help others to franchise well and ethically and succeed in that. And it's very much about changing the public perception of what franchising is, because there are actually more businesses out there franchising well and ethically than there aren't. It's unfortunately the few horror stories that there are that attract media attention, but the majority are doing great work on a day-to-day basis, and it's getting that out more than anything else. But the people that are in franchising are advocates of franchising, and I think that comes across very much so.
I think pretty much everyone I've met within franchising says once you're in franchising, you stay within franchising, because it's just such a great place to be. But I think also something that's really important is that shared knowledge between franchise brands that, in those forums and places like that, is really to the benefit of the franchisees as well, that are buying into these systems. Okay, they might not be so involved in all of these get-togethers and sharing of best practice, but actually they're getting the benefit of that, because the franchisors then disseminate the information to their franchisees. And I think that's something I really like as well, is that it's I guess it's times like the pandemic that people come together and help each other, and it feels like the net kind of spreads wider when you're in this industry, rather than many others that I've been in. Actually, in recruitment, didn't really feel that at all when I was there. So that's cool. So I've just got a few more questions to ask you, and I know you're not looking forward to this one, but I'm wondering if there's any funny, strange, or weird stories in your career that you're happy to and are able to share.
I was thinking about this, and I'm genuinely not sure there are funny, weird and strange stories. I could perhaps, I'm trying to think of one. I suppose the most bizarre thing I have possibly ever done in my career was one particular event which we held for our clients many, many years ago. I had a wonderful entrepreneurial client who had started pole dancing classes in
Okay.
Derbyshire, and she was doing exceptionally well with those. So we decided to hold a client event, which was pole dancing. At the time, I had to get all sorts of consents at varying different levels of the firm to whether that was an appropriate thing to be doing and inviting people. But actually, it was one of our most well-attended events for any client anywhere. We couldn't believe how many people came. And we had to move all of these poles into a certain area of the firm for people to come and enjoy themselves. I hasten to add that it was a women-only event. And I was, I think, possibly 6 months pregnant at the time, so it was very interesting.
Wow.
But people thoroughly enjoyed themselves, and that has been one of the most bizarre things I've ever done. Yes, but yeah.
Yeah, it was a trend quite a few years ago. Well, I'd say probably 7 years ago, that I knew quite a lot of women who were pole dancing for fitness, and I can imagine it's not an easy thing to do at all. And I'm sorry, I'm going to have to ask: were you doing anything whilst you were 6 months pregnant? Were you?
Yes, I had
Wow.
to, since I organised it, I had to demonstrate the first thing because, people are ill. So I had to go, and yes, it was
Wow.
interesting.
Good on you, and brave as well, because I think you imagine kind of upside down and then
There was no upside down, but yeah.
Good. Well, as long as you were safe, that's the main thing. But great. Well, my next question is more around any proud or inspiring moments that you've had within the industry, or actually within your career.
Proud or inspiring moments. Seeing clients succeed. I think that's really inspiring. I have had the pleasure of supporting and advising some amazing business owners that have gone on their own journey from day one, and seen them continue to grow and continue to succeed is a great pleasure of mine. Watching their businesses evolve from kitchen tables right the way to global enterprises is always amazing, being part of that journey. So that's really been something that brings me great pride.
Excellent. And my final question is, for anybody who's maybe looking to buy a franchise from whichever brand it may be, what one piece of advice would you give to them?
Do your homework.
Simple as that, isn't it, really?
Yeah.
And where do you think is some of the best places for them to do their homework? Where should they be looking? Is there any particular websites or?
There is a lot of information on the British Franchise Association's website for those that are looking and considering becoming a franchisee, about that whole process and what is involved, and what sort of things you should consider. They run courses and all sorts of things for you to find out about that whole process. So it is not a closed shop by any means. There's lots of publicly available information about what to look out for if you are a franchisee or someone looking to invest in taking a franchise. So I would really immerse yourself in that. And in the franchise world, there are franchise exhibitions that happen throughout the year. Go along to those. I speak myself normally on the BFA as part of the BFA seminars there, and there will be information available to you. So if you are thinking about getting into franchising, then my advice is to immerse yourself in franchising. Plenty to
Fantastic.
get.
Well, Fiona, thank you so much for your time today. It's been a pleasure to get to know you and hear a little bit about your career and what you're doing today. So yeah, thank you very much for your time.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much. Bye bye.
Thanks, Ned.